Our own Jonathan Jones caught up with head coach Mike McCarthy today after practice. Take a listen.
Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports, alongside Dallas Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. Coach, thanks so much for taking the time. A lot of energy out here. The offense went up against the defense in team drills. Seemed like defense maybe got the better of the offense in some of those late game situations.
Well, I think the biggest thing that stood out was obviously the 2 takeaways. But yeah, it was good work. I think it's time to get the pads. The tempo's being challenged. So, but yeah, it was good, solid practice.
Everyone knows about the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone follows this team. Who are some under the radar guys? And I'm thinking, especially of one wide receiver who had a nice day out here that people should know are having a great camp so far.
Well, definitely Jalen Tolbert and those guys, those young guys have really put the time in, and Jalen had another nice day today, and he's been pretty consistent, really, and it's been that way really since the end of last year. So, but I just give that whole group credit. I got to give Brandon Cooks a lot of credit just from his leadership, but we're excited about our young group.
What's Dak Prescott? Is Dak Prescott, let me ask you this, is Dak Prescott even better when his back is up against the wall? Because last year he was coming off the year with all the interceptions, and he goes out and he's the MVP runner-up. Is he better when his back's against the wall?
I just say this. I just think, if you look at his history, I mean, he just is always pushing the envelope. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be up against the wall. I just appreciate the way he works each and every day. He has tremendous drive. So yeah, I don't think the things that go on off the field even enter the field.
Trayvon Diggs, saw him out here working. Looked like he could maybe get out here right now.
Yeah, it looks great.
I mean, from your perspective, when do you think he can get out?
Soon. Definitely, they're definitely close. I know he'd like to get out there, but once again, you got to trust your medical staff. But I agree. I think he looks awesome.
And the last question for you: your old quarterback Aaron Rodgers recently said that every year about 8 to 12 teams can win the title. Do you agree with him? And are you guys one of those 8 to 12?
Well, I think every year, if you don't line up and think you can win one, then what the hell are you doing in this business? So, yeah, definitely, I think we're in that group.
Good deal. Mike McCarthy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, that was head coach Mike McCarthy after Cowboys camp. There you could find Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons. No CeeDee Lamb, though, as his holdout continues. You could also find our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Jonathan, great to see you. As I mentioned off the top, the holdout continues for CeeDee Lamb, who remains absent out at camp. It looks like he is putting in his own work, according to his Instagram I just took a look at. But what is the latest you're hearing around his situation?
Yeah, I hope you double tapped, liked it. Maybe if you wanted to comment on it, show CeeDee a little love. Listen, there's a lot of love for CeeDee Lamb here at training camp. Everyone knows that business is business. I was just standing here a few moments ago with Brandon Cooks, who said, look, I tell him all the time, I love him, can't wait for him to get out here, but obviously understand what the business element of all of this is. CeeDee Lamb is seeking to become the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. What that means is a contract that will average $35 million in average annual salary. Will he ultimately get that? All of us want things, and then our employers tell us what they are going to determine our value to be. But I am told that there are positive conversations. There is positive momentum between the two sides. So that is great to hear. Look, all of these contracts, whether CeeDee Lamb ultimately gets $35.1 million in average annual salary, that's to be determined. And really, if the Cowboys, if that's what he is seeking, simply to be at the top of a CBS Sports HQ graphic that shows AAV and that his name is above Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown and A.J. Brown, there are plenty of ways that the Dallas Cowboys can construct the contract where maybe the last couple years aren't really real. Maybe he will never see that salary, but he gets his name at the top of the graphic. Or he and his representation decide, no, we want the largest signing bonus for a non-quarterback in NFL history. We want cash flow. We want guaranteed money. All of those things can take place and are being talked through right now between both sides. But it does seem like there is positive momentum. Jordan, your natural follow-up and everyone watching, their natural question to that would then be, okay, well, when's it going to get done? I've been doing this long enough to know not to guess at something like that. Even when you do have some positive momentum, you want to say, hey, maybe within the week. We don't really know, but it does seem like of all of the contract situations facing Dallas Cowboys superstars, that this is the one that is closest to being resolved and should should be resolved at some point during training camp.
Well, that's good news to hear if you're CeeDee Lamb, but I think we're all striving to be atop of a CBS Sports AAV graphic, that's for sure. Well, meanwhile, Dak Prescott joins Lamb as another Cowboy, waiting for his deal to get done. However, Dak is present at camp. This is just something that's going to continue hanging over this team until a deal gets done. We'll start with his contract situation first, but also I want to know what you're seeing from him in this offense so far at camp.
Well, it was weird. I saw Dak Prescott out here, but he wasn't actually walking. He was floating because he's unbothered by his contract situation, because he understands that he's going to be the highest paid professional football player in world history soon enough, and whether that's going to take place this offseason, unlikely as it stands right now, or next offseason. That's what's ultimately going to happen for Dak Prescott. He has played this incredibly well. He's had one of the toughest stomachs in the NFL. Really, it's him and Kirk Cousins over the last 10 years who have played their situations so perfectly that they have been able to create an absurd amount of leverage in a sport where players don't get this sort of leverage. This is an owner-driven league when it comes down to it in terms of salary. The players don't get to dictate. If you compare the NFL to the NBA, you know, the players can dictate some terms. It doesn't really happen in the NFL. Dak Prescott can dictate what he wants, and if he doesn't want to sign a contract that will pay him, let's call it $56 million in average annual salary, which would put him above Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love, he doesn't have to, because his number will ultimately, and can, if he plays it correctly, start with a 6. It could be closer to $60 million in average annual value. So I would be surprised, not stunned, but mildly surprised if Dak Prescott ultimately strikes a deal with the Dallas Cowboys this offseason, also because of the concerns with the head coach situation. He doesn't know if Mike McCarthy, in the final year of his contract, will be his head coach next year. The entire Dallas Cowboys coaching staff here in the final year of their deal. So Dak doesn't have to give up any leverage when he maintains and holds some of the greatest leverage that any player has ever had. Meanwhile, you asked about the offense, so we'll get to that. This is an offense that will start along the offensive line. Looks really, really solid. And I know that they had some weaknesses the last couple of years after having one of the strongest offensive lines in the NFL for so long. Out here, Tyler Guyton, the rookie, finally got some first-team reps at left tackle. Would still expect Chuma to be the left tackle in week 1, but it was nice to see Guyton start to get brought along a little bit as the future left tackle of the Dallas Cowboys, the first-round pick. And then you move outside where, no, there's no CeeDee Lamb, but there's Brandon Cooks. Jalen Tolbert had a heck of a day out here. You heard earlier from Mike McCarthy talking about how well he has been performing. And then at the tight end position, whether you want to call Jalen Tolbert the number 3 tight end, or excuse me, the number 3 option, look at Jake Ferguson at tight end, who had a really nice day. And then lastly, of course, at the running back position, Ezekiel Elliott. His yards per game have gone down each successive year, but I would still expect him to be the starter for this Dallas Cowboys team. Not the bell cow that he had been in the past. Look for Rico Dowdle. Depending on matchups, maybe they get Vaughn in there. If Royce Freeman can make the team, they'll spell Zeke, and they are going to do a lot of different things. But again, make no mistake about it, this is an offense that is going to be led by Dak Prescott and with his arm.
Well, it sounds like things seem to be on track for this offense, maybe even a little bit of ahead of schedule, we could say. Well, a little less drama on the other side of the ball. JJ, the offense, as we know, is ahead of schedule, but the defense, which was to be expected with new DC Mike Zimmer getting things under his belt, are they further behind, would you say?
I'd say a little bit further behind. First of all, the pads aren't on, and they're going to come on early next week. And I think that that is a correct way to go about things. But also, let's consider this. Last year, when Mike McCarthy kind of took over the play calling and Kellen Moore had exited as offensive coordinator, it took a little bit for that offense to gel, to understand all the intricacies. Well, what did they do? They went out there, they won 12 games, and they scored more points than any other team in the NFL, more first downs than any other team in the NFL. And talking with Brandon Cooks earlier, he said said, yeah, we can actually be better than that because of last season. Well, the defense right now is dealing with something similar. You correctly and astutely point out about Mike Zimmer taking over as defensive coordinator after Dan Quinn left to be the head coach of the Washington Commanders. So there's some nuances that are taking place in the defense and in that defensive meeting room. But out here at team drills, Jordan, what I was able to see was a lot of takeaways. They don't have Trayvon Diggs, who we saw there, number 7, out here getting good work. He's on the physically unable to perform list, but he should be getting off at some point. There's no question that he will be starting week 1 opposite Deron Bland, with Jordan Lewis lining up as the slot corner. What you do want to see, and unfortunately we saw an edge rusher, Sam Williams, go down out here earlier in practice with a left knee injury. From my perspective, it didn't look good. There was no update from the Cowboys after practice, but they are going to need a little bit more up front, certainly in the middle of the defense. They need Mozzie Smith, the defensive tackle, to take that next step and be the player that he was drafted to be as a first-rounder last year, as well as Eric Kendricks, the longtime veteran middle linebacker who was brought in with the Dallas Cowboys with Mike Zimmer from their years with the Minnesota Vikings. He's the green dot over here. He's leading things in the middle of that defense. Got a pick off of Dak in drills earlier today. So I like what I have seen so far from this defense. But if there is a weakness, it would probably be sort of the middle of that interior. And I would not at all be surprised to see the Cowboys looking to add to that at some point here as we start to get to roster cut downs and guys who are street free agents.
Looking forward to seeing them find their footing. Jonathan Jones reporting live from Cowboys training camp here on CBS Sports HQ. Dallas returns 8 players from the 2023 AP All-Pro list, making them one of the best rosters in the entire league and favorites in the NFC East at plus 165 with a win total set at 10.5. Cowboys will look to be the first repeat champs in the NFC East since 2004.